Welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Tommy, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. It's a pretty good Tuesday. Not a bad one.
It's been decent. It's already this week is
so far
turning into a long week. It's only been one day, and I already feel like it's been two. So one of those weeks for me. How about you, Tommy?
We're good. We feel fresh and clean. We had a PC issue on Saturday, that uncorrectable error. So, I was forced into my normal spring cleaning of cleaning the computer.
Oh boy.
Like I started.
I do think this is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't done one in like 2 years now, so I feel like I'm on borrowed time at this point. But I feel like every year there needs to be like save everything you need to OneDrive, and then just reinstall your software. Just clean it all up, because there's things you install randomly at random times. You don't use them anymore. Like, it just feels good to get a clean install of Windows on your machine.
We are and again forced to, because I went to sign in again or start the computer, and it said, "Hey, install Windows." I'm like, "Well, I guess we're doing that today." So yeah, dude, it was a whole mount. Like, we had to mount a ISO kind of thing, get that installed on another drive. So
good gracious,
we're blazing right now. How fast my desktop's clean? It's great.
Awesome. All right, let's quickly just introduce our topic today, and then we'll go through the news. Today, our topic is around, is data science replacing traditional BI? There's a lot of talk about this AI, and where is it creeping into our business intelligence? How do we use it? What is the surface area here? We actually have a mailbag question that's asking more questions about this, particularly around a lot of other platforms. There's other platforms that are out in the space. Everyone's heard of Databricks. There's Snowflake. Microsoft has their Microsoft Fabric experience. So what does this mean? What kind of persona are we bringing to Power BI now? And does this even fit? I don't know. We're going to kind of unpack that today. But before we get into our main topic, let's do a couple items around the news. Tommy, we have, I think, an interesting one. I think this is quite interesting. Why this hasn't been supported until now, I don't know. But I'm looking at the first topic here is the Azure Maps is now being supported in publish to web, which interesting. Like, that's a pretty interesting item there. What do you think? I don't use publish to web other than like my personal reports and things like that. What do you think?
I have one report with buddies, and it's just baseball data that I pull. But no, from an organization point of view, I do know some government organizations who do use publish to web. It's actually pretty important for them to actually share some of that information to districts and parcels and all that kind of information. And maps are a big part of that. So honestly, I'm surprised this wasn't more supported, because usually if you're publishing on the web, there's a lot of organizations where that's a thing.
Yes. And I mean, publish to web, I mean, it's just on the internet. Azure Maps, you can literally go to Bing and just look at like an Azure map there. So like there must have been some kind of technical hurdle or something they didn't want to apply.
They had Bing Maps. That's why they had Bing Maps. But I mean, this is all on the Azure. So
this is all in Azure, and this is a better experience from my opinion. I mean, the maps, as much as maps, I think maps are interesting. I think maps have varying degrees of success with me. Like, they're pretty, they go on a page, they fill up some space. They do handle some really creative things, but I feel like a lot of times maps are just kind of there to be like some frill for the report. I'm not sure if it really tells me deep insights.
For a lot of local intensive companies, like even like sales teams in your stores, they are pretty integral. Like, and more than just like, ooh, I can see where we are now. So
do you really need a map to show me like Texas has a higher number of sales because there's more people there, or California has higher number of sales because there's more people?
Some are like active stores and they want to see what's close to them in the region, and zip code 557 is not as helpful. So,
well, I understood that one, but also if you look at that, I mean, there's no like distance mapping. Like, this is where I would kind of go. Like, if you're going to be doing things, it's like, that's where I would go towards like the icon map, which is a custom visual that does a lot more of the features there. So that's, I'm just looking at it going, like, if you just plop a map, I mean, some of the more interesting visuals that I've seen in reporting have like this really interesting, like when you click a region, the map zooms into place, and you can see all this really kind of zooming in features. Like, there's amazing things that people have done with them to make a really good looking report. But to me, it feels a lot more like polished than it actually is like deep analytics around the thing.
I'll change your opinion with one. There's one map that's critical to you, and that's where your package is on Amazon. What stop is it at? You always look on that map. Okay, how far are we? So depending on the data, but no, I'm glad this is available. I know a lot of reports that are going to be very happy with this.
I think so too. I think it's a good rounding out feature. So I'm very happy that that feature exists. The blog post is in the chat window if you want to check it out. It's also in the description below if you want to go see more about that new feature that has just recently been released. All right, Tommy, you found something. And it's fun when our community is kind of engaged, because I got someone emailing me this link like, hey, do you know about this? There is now a new tool. You can go estimate your fabric capacity. What size fabric capacity do you need to do something? Based on your workloads, what your workloads are, what size fabric capacity do you want? All right, Tommy, you've read the article, you played with the tool a little bit. What is your initial impression?
So my first thoughts with this was going to be like the old Power BI premium, enter users, enter how many creators, you'll basically get what your capacity is. This is obviously a little more intense. It's much closer to what you do in a pricing for Azure. And basically what this is, this price skew estimator is, we're just putting in our information. How much data do you have? How much of it's compressed? How much does it move? What workloads are you using? From everything from the amount of people who are processing to how long you're going to be running data flow on a daily basis.
Sure.
And it'll spit out for you your capacity that you probably need. All that being said, I would like to know some of the behind the scenes metrics that were used to create this.
Yes.
I don't know how far I'm going to go with that, but let me say this. Use this as a starting point.
I would agree.
It told me, based on what I do for a company one, that I needed a 164, which sounds great. And maybe it's because all those dang data flows, or that one data flow that I ran. But I was very surprised to see the number, some of the outputs there. Mike, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so let me just, I know this is a fabric-based tool. Let's just talk about that for one. So fabric-based tool, you may be looking at this going, again, also here, they said, what's the total size of your data compressed in gigabytes? I was trying to pick something less than 1 gig in size. So they've already put you like one. So my first thought here is like, they're already doing like 1 gig, and you can't go any lower than 1 gig. So if I'm thinking about like my capacities or things that I've built, like I'm playing with some initial things. I don't know exactly the size of all these things. So that's one challenge there. The number of tables across sources. Okay, maybe that's kind of interesting as well. Okay, fine. I selected only the option for Power BI, just the Power BI option. And it told me I need an F2 just to select an option there. And even then, I added just a couple extra users, and it automatically pushed me to an F16. So even when I wasn't adding no workloads of anything else, there needs to be something there. It's like a provision of like, you could probably just get away with a pro or premium per user item. Like if I have anything less than 100 gigabytes and I'm only using Power BI, there should at least be a provision here to say, and again, I get it. This is a fabric skew estimator, so it's trying to estimate which size fabric capacity you would need. I understand. But I also feel like the story isn't just fabric. The story is pro, premium per user, and fabric.
Well, no, I was going to say the story isn't just people migrating where they're like, oh yeah, I have all my data in a SQL database, and I have all these different things that are running in somewhat in other platforms. A lot of organizations are taking their old unstructured data and moving it to the lakehouse for the first time. So how do you estimate that? So.
And the other thing here too, I looked when I selected a workload of just Data Factory, so Data Factory, and then picked out the Data Factory. So there's a Data Factory option. So pick Data Factory, and then I picked Data Factory Powers for Data Flows Gen 2 ETL, right? So I just picked that and said, okay, I'm going to do Data Factory, and I'm going to have 2 hours of Data Flow Gen 2 running. When you look at the little metered bar, only 2 hours, I guess, of daily running, you've basically maxed out your F2. So I also agree, I disagree with that as well. If you're doing 2 hours of Data Flows Gen 2 on an F2, it's not nearly as highly used as what the indication of the notebook looks like. So it feels like a very rough estimate, and it feels like it's overly estimating high on a lot of things. So,
well, let me put it this way. I just tested. I said, I have 1 gig of data, 1 batch cycle, 1 table, but I run 5 hours of data flows, and that's it.
That's it.
F8.
You're done.
F8.
I know for a fact you could do 5 hours of data flows in a day and still fit it on F2. I know for a fact.
And it's saying in F8. I'm like, whoa. So
yeah, this is where I like my reality is telling me this is a little bit different. And this is also, I mean, the other thing I haven't gone into too deep on this one would be like,
it's not.
Like I would also want to go back and forth between like, going between, what does it say for Spark jobs and Power BI? Because I'll also argue here, I've done a number of Spark jobs on an F2, and the Spark jobs is way more efficient than a Data Flows Gen 2 job. So again, when I look at this analysis, I'm thinking if I'm using Spark jobs, I'm starting at the F2 and working my way up. But this is one of these places here where people are still trying to think like a SQL server, in my opinion. Right? People are thinking that I need to understand the total capacity first and then go by the unit. I don't think that's the right approach here, especially with cloud features. You realize like within a minute or less, I can go into the Azure environment and I can change my F2 to an F4 like at a drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you always just start with the F2, run some of your jobs in test, see if you start falling over, and then, okay, well, that wasn't big enough. Let's go up to an F4. Okay, let's go up to an F8. So and now there's this whole option of like auto scale billing for Spark, which is more like pay as you go, which I love, by the way. Then you don't even need to include Spark as part of the purchasing agreement here. That doesn't even include. So I think this is a overly simplified tool that's not really going to tell you what you need. And I would argue you really just need to get in and just use Fabric a bit. Start at the smallest SKU, run a couple jobs, see what it does, and then from there you'll be able to gauge what size capacity you actually need.
This is very concerning for my data flows, though. I've switched over a lot because maybe this is true. Remember the test I did when you were traveling and about? That was a single data flow, and I still maxed out. So
yes, I agree,
this
Tommy.
is very concerning for data flows. This is very concerning.
I will also argue, though, Tommy, this page where they made this, this page looks like a Power BI embedded report into an actual website. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like that someone made a Power BI embedded.
Oh, those are all what if parameters. Are you kidding me?
So, yeah, that's exactly what I was
thinking. There's one page with 18 sliders. So
I have to inspect the page and figure out how they actually built that thing in there. But I'm guessing it looks like it's an embedded iframe, but I'm not even quite sure there. So maybe someone even built a little web client. It looks like I'm looking at the page code right now. It looks like it's coming from Deep Fabricator Estimator Prod 01, AzureDataFactory.net. So it looks like it's the web page is actually built a web app. So it's like a little tiny mini web app that people are using and not a Power BI report. So, anyways,
interesting.
I will say this:
if they're switching away from embedded Power BI.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just make this an embedded Power BI report and publish the web, the dumb thing? Anyways, whatever. It is what it is. I will also argue, I think what Kratos BI is saying here in the chat, you should always just start at an F2 and work your way up to what you need. Because I just really feel passionate about like that's the right approach. And the fact that if it was a week to procure a bigger machine or a week or two to get a bigger size, whatever the machine was, then I would be a bit more cautious around scaling up and getting the right size initially. But since I don't even care about that, start with the smallest thing. Save yourself some money and then only scale up when you need to for your workloads. Anyways, that's totally a side note. Anything else, Tommy?
I think
all right. Let's go back to your favorite topic. One last news item, and then we'll get into our main topic today. Tommy has found the VS Code for Fabric extension. Tell me about this, Tommy.
Mike, it's plural.
Tommy loves VS Code. I'll say that.
Yeah, I love it. I love VS Code. So, and honestly, I just like the environment. And for me, it was getting used to how it all works. But once you do, it's just more comfortable. So yeah, this goes back to one thing we've talked about too, where right now your kind of whole world will live at app.powerbi.com to do all of your workflows. But I think Microsoft has realized this is a lot of developer-based things that we have. We have notebooks, we have user-defined functions, we have, build your model and Tyndall. And those are all things that typically someone likes, a little better environment than just the web. Obviously,
Yes.
if you wanted to play with Fabric, you had to have a good browser. And again, don't click Alt Q, you'll close your machine. So now they've realized too that all these things make sense as part of a local environment or on your desktop. And what we have now are, I believe, two sponsored functions. We are three. We have our Fabric app, our Fabric extension, which gives you some information about your capacity. You can look at a bunch of things. They have the previously Synapse remote engineering, which basically allows you to connect to your notebooks and run a Spark job locally connecting to your Spark pool. And we now have the new user-defined functions as its own extension.
So I will say this one around. I really love VS Code. The experience of editing code, writing things in there, super awesome. I even pay for GitHub Copilot because it's so powerful. It's so great when writing code. So all that is amazing. And I really want this to work very seamlessly. So we're not quite there yet. I feel like there's a little bit of friction for me. I haven't quite got it to work reliably all the time. Maybe I have too many extensions. Maybe I'm not sure how to use it correctly, but I really want to go into Fabric, get to my notebook and say, open in either VS Code online or open in VS Code locally for me, and then just be able to have the full editing code experience right there. And I want to be able to run notebook commands against the Fabric cluster to return the results that I want, which you can do. You do this. It just I've had varied success. Like sometimes the connection works, sometimes it doesn't. It's been a bit hard to like sign in correctly for me. Maybe I signed into too many things. I'm not quite sure. The experience is a little bit rough around the edges at this point. And it needs to be a bit more reliable for me, but I think we'll get there. I think it'll get improved. Things in VS Code seem to move really fast anyways. Mm-hmm. So I love this experience, Tommy.
Yeah, I think there are three things until I'm using this full time. One, connect to my Git already. Right now, the notebook extension will download local copies of just the notebooks, and then you have to connect to that. So if you open your own notebook from Git, you can't do anything with it. So this is a separate thing.
So let me just unpack that idea real quick before we go to the next one. You're saying that you would like to go right to the Git repo and say, look,
my PC. Yeah,
I already have it connected to Git. Let's just go there
in a notebook.
And then you can be in the notebook and say, oh, I'm in the notebook. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to go, hey, notebook, go fire up the corresponding workspace.
Right.
Give me a cluster that I need to run on.
Exactly.
And then just run the notebooks directly there. And then when I'm done, I can check my changes right back. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's 100% on point. I love that feature.
And then give me the Spark utilities. You can connect to your Spark cluster. I don't know if it recognizes the local lakehouse that's pinned to that notebook. And there is no MS Spark utilities, which are pretty essential. Yeah. So you can do a lot, but you can't do it all.
Okay.
Anyways, we're on a great track. We're on the right track. And that's what I'm excited about.
Awesome. Oh, one other random thought here, Tommy, just around this whole notebook experience. In notebooks, did you know that there is a magic command called configure in notebooks? I did not know this. So it allows you to tune the notebook. You can magic command your way
in the documentation. Yeah.
What on earth, dude? I was just watching. I had a YouTube seminar with Santosh, and he was showing me like you could do percent configure inside the notebook, and you could set up the notebook settings right there in one command, and it gives you like a good starting point. It gives you the features you may want to turn on. I thought that was amazing. So I didn't even know that existed. I want to point that out and say that's a feature in notebooks that you might love, and just use the magic command for configure. Okay. Anything else, Tommy? Want to jump into our main topic for today?
Let's go into the main topic.
All right. Today, our main topic will be around is data science platforms replacing our traditional BI?
Data science? We don't talk about data science.
You hear that, Tommy?
Yeah.
Looks like today we have a guest. So we'd love to bring on a guest today. Ginger Grant, welcome to the podcast today. We're very happy to have you. Ginger Grant is an amazing MVP. Does a ton of educational content and consulting around data science. So I think we have the right person to talk about data science with us today. Ginger, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Really happy that you had me on, Mike.
Well, let's jump into our topic today. Tommy, give us the topic for today, and then we're going to kind of react to this and give our impressions of like, where does this fit? Is data science actually going to replace our regular dashboards and business intelligence. All right, Tommy, give us our mailbag question and we'll kick off the topic for today.
We got a mailbag. It's a great mailbag. And it's a pretty long one, so hang tight. Hello, I work for a Dutch company and we make software solutions for local governments. As a position as BI consultant, in recent years, I see our customers, mainly municipalities, switching from Cognos to Power BI with the main reason as an attractive price model, integration with Office, and the simplicity of Power BI. In my view, there's a shift coming to data platforms such as Databricks, Snowflakes, and Microsoft Fabric. But reporting and analytics is certainly not becoming cheaper or less complex with the arrival, let's say, for example, as notebooks, integration in Delta Lake, Iceberg for storage. Furthermore, in addition to a semantic layer in the above mentioned data platforms, a thin semantic layer in Power BI or Cognos is also necessary for business users to create reports themselves. Specifically with Fabric is a business-oriented data platform is more attractive for an organization to set up a data warehouse without the consultancy. But in my opinion, it is a pitfall for organizations because it looks very simple from the outside. I attended Databricks in Amsterdam 2 weeks ago, and they also talked about the shift coming to data platforms. In essence, the main goal is, Michael's favorite phrase, democratizing data. The focus is now on commonly used BI tools, but this will diminish in the future as AI will enrich the data in the platforms, do the less fun jobs for the data engineer with higher quality, and business users will ask more just a question and create a dashboard for sales. In this topic, or the near future of analytics and data science, this is the shift to data platforms and the associated complexity worth the conversation. Regards, Bastian, and I don't know if I can say your last name, but Bastian from the Netherlands. So
awesome.
A lot to unpack here.
Oh, yes. All right, let's pick out a couple key areas we want to kind of maybe touch on or topics around this as well. So first thing that kind of stands out to me, migrations. What do we see here going for migrations? Like are people, what do we see happening? Tommy, what do you see? Ginger, what do you see? Who's migrating to Power BI?
Keith said a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. For one, there already is a thin semantic layer inside of Power BI. So I think you missed that one entirely. But in terms of, migrations, one of the things that I think is great about Fabric is how it helps data scientists because they want that raw data and it's very hard for them to get. I worked with a bunch of data scientists recently and they were all ticked off that they couldn't get access to the raw data. They only had access to the data warehouse, which they did not want. It does not help them.
And that's the warehouse is the sanitized layer of data. That's, we've already removed errors, we've removed problems, and maybe even depending on where you are in your organization, that warehouse could be like your star schema almost already. And that, to your point, Ginger, that's not what data scientists wants. Where do you feel like in your experience, we have like this whole medallion architecture? This is kind of like the modern way of building warehouses. Storage is cheap. Compute is a bit more expensive. So we store a bunch of data in bronze, silver, and gold. Where do you see data scientists wanting to touch the data? In what layer of this medallion space?
Oh, they want raw data. They don't want anything curated.
Bronze, nothing cleaned up in silver.
Cleaned up, absolutely nothing.
Not deduplicated. And what tools are you seeing them use the most often? I mean, I'm assuming notebooks, just from that's what I see here. But like, where do you see the most use coming from?
They generally write a lot of code in Python. And there's some that are still using R because of the libraries that have been created that are specific to their industry to do analysis. But the kind of analysis that you ask a data scientist to do is not the same as you would ask a BI developer to do. You need both of them, but they answer very different questions.
So this is, I think, creates a very interesting conversation with like these different platforms. And the semantic layer, I think, is always going to be there, right? That's for hyper fast queries. I would also think there's some layer here where, I saw a slide where Databricks is now messaging there is this semantic layer that exists for the BI user, right? BI users don't want to go in and they don't want to write a bunch of Python to go get the data they want. They want something that's kind of drag and drop. Here's some fields. It all kind of relates together. That makes sense for that business user. And to be clear, I think, Ginger, you pulled out a great point here. Power BI has had this for what? 10 years, 20 years, if you count Excel when it had pivot tables like a long time ago. That semantic layer has been around for a long time in the Power BI space.
Absolutely. You know, what's kind of funny is that I think one of the big reasons that people don't, my cousin who works for a large entertainment company, and she was saying that they tried using Power BI, but their models were so complex that it took like 8 hours in Tableau before it gave up. And in Power BI, she couldn't get it to work because it was just spinning. That doesn't tell me that it's a failure of the semantic layer. That just says that, you know what, you probably need people that are dedicated to build a good semantic layer for reporting. Those aren't the same people. Report people are not semantic layer creation people.
So I'm curious because Mike and I have talked a lot about the shift with the data engineering side. And I think we've shifted mindsets where we thought like, okay, all these data engineers are coming to Fabric. And it was really kind of the other way around. It's like, well, a lot of business users are coming to data engineering, it's kind of shifting up. I have an opinion with the data science thing, and they want the raw data because at least from the Microsoft platform, data platform, the semantic layer was not, or especially the semantic model was not something very easily accessible and not in the structure or format that they want. But that's completely changed. And it's almost like they would rather the raw data because that was the best method or approach at the time. I feel like there's an argument to be made now with the Lakehouse, with at least Semantic Link Labs too. We're even just taking the company's data coming in through the right platform, where you have right now with data science a really good avenue, not just to grab a CSV, but to grab something semi-clean. They only want the raw thing because they need it as raw or as, you know, unstructured as possible and fast. But now we have Fabric, and I feel, does that change anything? To me, it does.
Well, there's also an issue of trust, right? Because a lot of people are like, well, I wasn't the one who engineered this data. Really?
True.
Is it? Did you clean some stuff out of there that I might need?
That's an interesting. Is that a data culture problem more so than a technology problem, you think?
Oh, I mean, if you work with data scientists and BI people in the same organization, I did that recently at a large hospital, and yeah, that's kind of an adversarial relationship, believe it or not.
It's a huge culture thing.
Oh yeah.
So so this begs the question in my mind here is, can we actually have, so there's maybe two thoughts in my mind I'm thinking about. One is Fabric the right place for data science to come to? Like, do we have, like, Ginger, in your mind, based on your experience in like data science previously, and now when we have Fabric, how do you feel is the tooling correct for what they need? Can we get the job done in Fabric? Let's just start there, maybe.
I think it's a lot better because a lot of the times the problem with data, the biggest thing that data scientists were spending their time doing is figuring out where the data lives and how they were going to get access to it in the way that they wanted it. So having a data estate where you can just go to your bronze layer and get what you need, hey, that's great. And I can tell you, you know, they love VS Code too. They want to.
Okay, good.
So yeah,
like my comment. So my comment earlier about like the more we can have Fabric integrate closer with VS Code, the happier data scientists will be in that space, which I would totally agree with that one as well. I really like that idea a lot.
Yeah, they would rather not use anything else than the VS Code.
Well, but it's not just notebooks too. Like I know the data scientists, the pure data scientists, even though we work in data, it really is like saying how culturally similar you are to someone across the world too. It's like we're both human, but that's where the similarities kind of end, because it's not just they're much closer to that developer role where they're not just doing notebooks, it's Python scripts. They're writing their own packages too. So they need, usually the raw, like local or raw data is accessible because, again, I just don't need to connect to some runtime. I'm writing packages. I'm writing a ton of things that need these local installs. So it's not just the data that's the problem making it accessible. Even though, which is curious because Microsoft's doing a big push with the data science space right now in Fabric. And I think there's like 3 features available and pure data science. It's the environment, it's notebooks, which is the same thing for data engineering, and it's the machine learning or the experiments. Are those just like stamped on to me because they feel like they are not nearly what a lot of data scientists are looking for?
Well, I can tell you that it's missing some. So I was working with an organization. They're basically like, cool, we can save money. Everybody's going into Fabric. We're going to push all of the data scientists in there. And they were not happy with that because they really liked some of the features and functionalities of Azure machine learning which aren't in Fabric. So if you want to do management, you can create a model in Power BI, but you can't management. It's not monitoring it for spread. All the stuff that you have in Azure ML is not there. So they're like, we're losing stuff if we move to Fabric.
And that the Azure ML model management, that is what's the language? Is it it's not, I want to say the words flow, but that's wrong. What's the model management? There's like an open source tool that helps you manage models. What's the name of that? It's dropping my name.
It's ML Flow.
ML Flow. Okay. I thought about something Flow. So ML Flow is like you can track all kinds of things like the input parameters, what model you used, what version of data you tested on inside ML Flow. So the idea is as you run tests, and I work with a team that did some data science stuff, and they were explaining to me like, we need something that allows us the ability to run a test, add new data, do changes to parameters, and verify that these new models we're building are better or not compared to that original model. And we may need to go back to the original state of, because again, machine learning, you have to understand the version of the data that you're running the ML on is important. You need a state in time of what was the state of that data that you trained that original model on.
Yeah, and if I'm connecting to something, a semantic model that's changing rapidly all the time, that doesn't help me.
You're right, Tommy. There is no. That's a really good point, Tommy.
Yeah.
Semantic models don't have snapshot. I mean, you can build snapshots into them. But like, there is no concept of a snapshotted semantic model, and if you're using the semantic model as a reference point to your, machine learning or your ML Flow, we have no way of knowing like what the version of that data, because that data is constantly fluid. It's changing every day. We're getting more new information, so that could influence your tests. And then retraining a model that was done a month ago on some data that was stored a month ago probably won't be a thing if you use the semantic model.
Well, you got to think too. I mean, like, data changes all the time. Like, for example, I'm going to talk about some machine learning that I'm sure that we have all run into. You get that call or that text from your credit card company saying, we think that you have an invalid transaction. And you're like, oh, what is that?
Yeah.
Well, I worked for a company, and at the time, if you changed your credit card address to Hollywood, Florida, I immediately flagged your card. Well, why?
Really? Because that was a place that had a lot of fraud from it.
Yeah, because a criminal set up there. Those guys are stupid.
Yeah.
So,
no offense to Florida, but
I mean, they move, right? And they realize, well, that's not working for us anymore. We'll do something different. You need to have your model do something different. And that data is changing coming in. You're not getting transactions like you were before. And to indicate frauds, you need that constant analysis. Well, if you've got a model that was trained on old data, the crooks move around and they do different things. You have to have data drift saying, wait a minute, this isn't what we used. This isn't what we did when we trained it. And you can automatically monitor data drift in some of the existing tools. That Fabric doesn't have anything like that.
Another way your card gets flagged is and I'm not proud of this, spending $60 at Taco Bell immediately. So that is an outlier, and I have skewed their data. So
now, Tommy, were you feeding your entire neighborhood, or is this just a Tommy run? I'd like 16 gorditas, and I need 45. What's the saucer looking thing? They have those saucer looking Crunch Wrap Supremes, right? I need 45
let me
Crunch.
One of each, please. So but that's a really great note. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that is a great point where there's a lot of non-starters right now for the pure data scientists.
Yes.
So,
but it's not
So
BI. Like BI is so different.
So this is what I wanted to kind of touch on. What's your reaction, Ginger, to like these AI functions that are coming to the fabric layer here? So like, I mean, we have so we have these things like data agents that are coming for us in the fabric world. We have these AI functions that are coming. I've been of the impression that, look, as a company, and some companies are large enough that require like a full-time data science on staff. I get that. I understand. But I feel like Microsoft is a huge company, and they've got tons of data scientists just trying to figure out things for us. So really, really like that they're doing this. But they're also bringing there's a gap between what the data scientists are trying to do and what the business users need. And I think what they're trying to accomplish with these data agents, potentially to some degree, and maybe even these AI functions, is here we have some common patterns that you will do AI with. We're probably not going to do fraud detection with a common AI pattern because, Ginger, to your point, right? It's so niche to what that company needs. They're going to need someone to figure it out. But these other things like, key term extraction, sentiment analysis, these kind of like basic lower level elements that are like, we could just make this a product and give you functions that do that. What's your opinion on this, Ginger? And how are you seeing AI seep into our BI stack?
Well, you know what's interesting? So ML has been seeking into the BI stack for years. I've worked at companies where all of the people who there's generally speaking a cadre of Excel/data people who report to the executive committee and provide them the answers that they need. And they're all about doing weird one-offs. Well, there is a tool that's been existed for years, in the machine learning tool inside of Excel that you can buy for forecasting, data and budgetary. And a lot of people have it because that helps them do their budgeting job and their Excel jockeys. I see kind of AI in Fabric is kind of a similar sorts of things. We have this need where we want to incorporate other technology. We want to provide answers. But it's funny. I also remember at one point in time working, explaining how Power BI was going to work to an executive. And he's like, and I said, you can create your own reports. And he looked at me and said, that's not in my pay grade.
No.
People, a lot of people were like, well, I'm not going to use asking questions about AI is great, but I don't know what to ask. What do I ask it? And so they just want someone to give them a dashboard because that's easier. Give me a dashboard. Show me what I need to know, and then I'll tell you what's wrong with it. And then I can go dive into what I know, what interests me that prompts it. Because staring at it, we've all done this. Stare at a blank screen. You're like, what do I put in there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have also one questions, and then you're like, forget it.
And Ginger, I think you hit the nail on the head there with another note here. Like when we look at my experience of the business intelligence side of machine learning, I think I kind of have a sour taste in my mouth a little bit for the natural language Q&A, the things that there's all these AI visuals that are kind of built into Power BI desktop. The only one that I think I actually use is the decomposition tree that actually adds any value to me. The other ones just are they're very difficult to work with. And I think it's very hard for people to understand the output of those custom AI visuals. The key influencer one, I mean, it's pretty. It does things. I can't even understand it. I just throw data at it. I'm like, what am I missing here? Is there something here that I'm looking at that I don't understand? And I think maybe that's part of the role of the data scientist at some level is, they're going to do maths and sciencey things on the data for you. How are we going to bring that technology over to the business user side? That's where I'm kind of still trying to figure out how this relationship's going to work. Tommy, you were going to say something?
No, it's funny with all those tools. And I remember when automated insights came out and I think there's two areas Microsoft's trying to focus on right now. There's data science for the business user and data science for the developer. And for the business user, we have the visuals, but all those tools don't work. And I try to love the key influencers report and I try to love automated insights. I love the concept, but the problem is with both of those, and where really it's always going to be a non-starter, is me as the creator or even the one playing with it. I have no control on the weights, right? So with key influencers, something increase, decrease. Well, by how much? What's my weights here that I'm going to say is statistically significant? What if I want to weight a field more than something else? Where if I put in their, if they complained, that should be a higher weight towards showing if it's significant or not. Right now, with automated insights, with all those visuals, I have no control. So it's just giving me the standard kind of template, which usually for your data, for someone, if you're using public data, it probably works great, but usually for custom data, it's not going to be helpful. So we have the visuals, we have the data agents, but I wouldn't call that data science. So, but then the other area we have is the developer, but I'll focus where we had data flows, Gen 1 data science. If you remember all those machine learning fields in a data flow, which was kind of neat. But anyways, trying to get back on track, I think we have all those influencers where we have the business user, where right now for them, what Microsoft is trying to focus on is simple ask questions generalizations, because that's all you can get right now, because a data scientist can't control any of those outputs yet in Fabric.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Tommy.
What do you feel about, so as I think about this question again, I'm kind of unpacking some of the other pieces here, like, focusing on, commonly used BI tools, or we're seeing different tools out here in the marketplace. And I get, the main ones I'm thinking about here is like Snowflake, Databricks, and Fabric. I feel like this is like a 3-horse race at this point. And where I see things, I think initially when I was talking with a friend of mine who his company does use Snowflake, he was saying Snowflake initially had no plans to do any data science. It was all Iceberg. It was all BI reporting. It was bring everything to this Snowflake warehouse, basically. It was basically just a data warehouse. And they have recently, I think Snowflake has changed their tune here. And they're now adding AI-based things inside of it, because I think the competition is ramping this up. Databricks, for sure, is all about the AI and the data engineering. And to be frankly honest, I think Databricks is really leading this data science space, in my opinion. They've got superb data engineering tools. They've got easy ways of loading data through. They have ML flow already built into the product. Like, there's a lot of things that I think they're but it's also a very code-heavy centric space. And it feels like Databricks is trying to break that ceiling into the BI AI dashboards space a bit, and they're playing catch up there. Whereas I look at Power BI coming at it from Power BI is this great visualization front end tool. They're capturing, I think I keep saying this over and over again, but Microsoft on their recent call was saying there's 30 million monthly active users of Power BI. There's a huge audience that's already using the product and the tool. Again, trying to unpack this question a bit more, what do we think is the ability for people that are in the business that get bit by the data science bug, that start looking at it and going, I like this. This is kind of my story a bit. I started as a mechanical engineer and I liked the data and AI space and thought, I think I want to be a data scientist. Now I kind of wound up, I'm probably not a data scientist. I mean, I did a half a master's in data science, so I kind of understand the things of it. But I really liked the data, the notebooks, the code. What is your thoughts, Ginger? Are you seeing the market? Are there other people in the business that like this and are maybe doing more data science because of Fabric?
Well, I think it's one of the things that's interesting is that if you looked at, since you mentioned your degree, if you looked at, what everybody wanted to hire is a data scientist. And if you look at what data scientist positions are paying now, you can see that there's the bloom is off the rose there. There's not that demand. And I know several people majored in data scientists and are doing BI. And the reason why is a lot of organizations got frustrated because data scientists, especially if they hired people in from academia, take like 6 weeks to come up with an answer.
Yeah.
And because some of that analysis, it takes a lot of time. You can like, I worked at a client and they wanted to know, what moved their best customers to invest in more products at the bank. And we took like weeks of analyzing data to determine we didn't have the data that showed anything. But like, thank you very much. I still have you're still paying for my 6 weeks rate to find this out. But
right.
Yeah.
And from an ROI perspective, they'd be like, you know what? if I had that money, would I be better served at monitoring what's going on with those current customers by looking at a dashboard?
Wow.
I might as well ask Copilot. And another good point too, is
with the Copilot reference, just zinging it in there,
just
Tommy.
added in. So
who needs data scientists? Just ask Copilot. You know,
it works.
Hey Copilot, do I need to do a basket analysis? Should I even hire a data science? Can I just ask you, Mr. Copilot?
Where are all the fraudsters? Are they still in Florida? So, well, and the data scientists too. I mean, that's an established industry and career. I don't think there's a lot of data scientists, pure data scientists, who don't have a degree in data science. Unlike our space, where it's like, I'm a sommelier, I am a marketer, and I come because I was reminiscing about the whole Power BI career. It's like when I started Power BI, there was nothing to look back to on what best practices were, because Power BI just came out. There's nothing like it. Data science, this is data science in the academia, the practice, the environment, the education has been around for a long time and very established. Interesting you say that though about the cost thing, because usually they were worth a pretty penny. But we're finding with that the speed of data right now anyways.
I'm going to go on a tangent here, and this is maybe a very bad tangent. Well, Ginger, you can correct me and put me back on track here if I get too far off the rails. When I think of data science, I think we kind of maybe put a bit too much weight on, and there's also this, so there's been a couple terms, right? There's like ML, machine learning, then there's data science, where it's kind of like the language now, what we're seeing, at least hearing Microsoft voice that. But at the end of the day, isn't this just a lot more of like just fancy statistics, lots of statistics at scale with computers? I mean, a lot of this is let's go back forward before we started seeing ML and data science. It was like heavy statistics. Like, what's the most probable outcome from all these different things, and there are ways to group things, but it's just computer algorithms that are doing very heavy compute on things. And again, it's probably much more evolved than it. I'm oversimplifying the problem here, but like that was the original step. So we've had data science for multiple years now. It's been around for way longer than we've had the term, but it's just been called different things over time. Is that your impression too, Ginger?
Well, I've worked with several insurance companies, and they're like, now they're calling us data scientists. They used to call us statisticians.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
All the time, like, how much money would we lose if we have a hurricane that hits North Carolina? Run the math.
Yeah.
And what's the statistical probability of that occurring? I actually worked at an insurance company, and it was high risk insurance company, and they did all sorts of wacky stuff, like they insured a golf tournament. So what's a statistical probability that they're going to have to pay out if somebody hits a hole-in-one on the 19th hole and they give them a new caddy?
Oh my goodness. That's a great problem.
Like a casino.
Yeah. Okay. You call that statistics, but they called that an insurance policy. And guess what? They wrote that policy and they didn't pay out because nobody got that hole-in-one. Well, and I talked to the guy. He was happy he got to play golf to do his analysis.
I'm in the wrong career. I picked the wrong job. I need to do golf statistics insurance. It sounds like that's the place I need to be.
I'm going to start. Yeah, I'm switching jobs. I'm insurance golf. So
that's amazing. That sounds like a really fun project. I mean, I'm also thinking like all the variables. It could be like, what is the wind? Like every golf course is slightly different. Who are the golfers that are playing on it? What's like? There's the oodle. Like again, this is where I think my mind goes with this. I love the idea of that. But my mind instantly gets hurt by how do you get all the data sources together? Like you have to scrape all this data and shape this data together to get it like any metric you have, you need the numbers from it to help you do the prediction. So where are they getting that data from? How are you like that's in my opinion, that's pure data engineering. That's all like suck it out, Python it, put it in a lake house. That's the kind of stuff that you need to be playing with.
Yeah, I mean, you're into baseball, Tommy. Baseball is nothing but stats. Yeah. I mean, I remember I was watching baseball with my dad, and they're like, "Well, this particular batter has got like a blah 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 against pitchers that have more than 3 syllables in their last name." I'm like, that is crap.
But a lot of data points, yeah.
Well, Tommy missed his calling. Tommy really should have been.
I tried. So that's when I started in the data space. I'm like, I want to be a data scientist, and I'm going to be a data scientist for the New York Yankees because I need a bunch of them. I have a friend who she works with a ton of players. She's like, you don't want to do that because everyone wants to be a data scientist. Who's a data scientist wants to work in baseball. So the turnaround is like 80%, and they all have doctorates.
You mean turnover? The turnover of like that
turnover. So
like turnaround,
in sports. So, anyways, but that's a big point too. Can I get what's your take? I want to get your guys' take, or what's more likely here, scenario for you. The kind of premise here is we've seen this with the data engineering right now, where we knew that there's the pure data engineers and they lived in this world, and the tools are becoming so accessible to a business user where I'm not just I'm not just driving a toy car around right now in Fabric in terms of being able to do a lot. I can drive the full Ferrari. And we're seeing now where a lot of the concepts, I can do a ton of the engineering in Fabric, and it's a light version with someone who didn't have that experience. What's more likely? Is data science also going to follow that? Are they going to improve Fabric in the tooling and the user interface to allow someone who maybe does not have the background or the environment to do a ton of the things that you're talking about, the weights, the snapshots? Or will data science still live in its own black box in a different environment with different platform? Which one's more likely? Is Fabric going to become more seamless with data science for a business user? Or is it always going to live in that black box?
Ginger, you go first, and then I'll give my response next.
I will say that like the big thing that people like, nobody gets rid of their data anymore because it's cheap and they can keep it. And that's the kind of thing that data scientists want. I was working with a company and I said, well, how much data do you want to look at for your analysis? And they said, well, we have to have at least 5 years and we're looking to probably do 11. And I said, well, why is that?
Wow.
And they said, we have a change in business cycle every presidential election. So you want to
analyze. You need a couple changeovers to figure out what's happening through each change.
Yeah, because interesting. They have changes. So if Fabric is the data store for that, if you've got archived data, and nobody gets rid of anything anymore, and then that's great. Then you can go through and do business cycle analysis for years and look at ongoing trends because you have the data. Now it's great if it's Fabric because it's accessible and cheap. Then it's much easier to do that and figure out like, well, where's that data live and how do I get my grubby hands on it? So.
I love that answer. So, Ginger, your answer is like exactly what I was thinking in my mind. I was thinking, Tommy, like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you do it, right? You can connect to OneLake with third-party tools if you need to, right? If you have a mega machine on your local machine and you want to run the machine learning on this machine here locally or whatever that may be, OneLake is just the storage location. It's just a blob storage account at the end of the day. So, I guess there's maybe two parts to my thought here. One, I think, Ginger, you're 100% right, man. I see this. Whoever has the data has the control. That's the story here for data science. Whether it's in raw form and coming right from the API or right from the web scrape or whatever, you've got to stick it somewhere. And I think Microsoft knows this, and they say, look, if we can get people to bring their data to the Lakehouse or the OneLake experience, well, now we can bolt on experiences to that let you use this in other places, right? So maybe we don't get the Azure ML type experience on top of Fabric 100%. But what if Azure ML can just connect to the Lakehouse and still have the same bronze level source access of data to everything else we're already doing in Fabric? So that we have some of this where there's a pile of data showing up in Lakehouses that are all raw form for data scientists, do your experiments, right? But then from that same raw data, you can also go through and start building out the warehouse of things. So I think the idea for me, if I look at this, I don't think a business user is going to come in and be super excited to become the data scientist. And we're going to continually see these, I'm going to call them watered down experiences of a data scientist coming to the BI user. I think AI functions is a great opportunity for that, right? This is a great opportunity where we can take the best learnings from data scientists, package it up in a module. And my experience has been those first couple projects where companies have been doing just BI reporting and they start doing a little bit of AI, you get a really large return on investment on those initial couple projects of doing some AI projects. That's where your biggest return comes. You've had none, and now you're doing something predictive. I think it gets much harder at the other end of that curve when you're trying to really tune the model, trying to squeak out the last bit of performance on things. That last 20% of how you really integrate those, it's much more difficult. You need much cleaner data. And I would also argue, I've read some articles on this one back from my data science days. If you want better models, give it better data, period. You can tune the variables, you can tune all the things, but the quality of your data increasing has like the largest effect on the AI. So all this to say, I'm trying to wrap up my final thought here because I'm just going all over the place. So I apologize. So let's come back to like a real thought here. I think we're going to continue to see larger intersections between data science and Fabric. Me personally, I would like to see deeper integrations to tools that data scientists already use and are very happy with. Either you bring fully that experience into Fabric, like all the things, ML Flow, the Auto ML experiences, the Azure ML Studio, like bring everything to Fabric. It's either got to all come over, or the alternative is you give very deep hooks into Fabric and allow those users to push and pull data in out of the lakehouse easily with other tools that data scientists are already comfortable with, they're already using. So that's kind of where I land on that perspective. All right. I think we're just about at time, Tommy. Any final thoughts, Tommy, for you?
No, I was just going to slightly disagree or agree to a
You can always do that. Of course.
I think if you look, I think we're taking a lot of what data engineering and Fabric is for granted right now in terms of the seamlessness and how much is available. It's really not a watered down version, except for that last like 5-10%. If you look at the Fabric kind of grow up story with engineering right now, with data engineering, you realize how much of that was impossible, even if you had access to that, if you weren't a data engineer. Look at, because of the user interface, look at shortcuts and connecting to your lakehouse. That was all code, and the data pipelines used to be so focused on your variables, and you had to have so much educational background. Now they have the UI to do a ton of that. And I mean, when I started with Synapse years ago, when I first was trying on myself, I'm like, what the heck am I looking at or doing? And you're reading documentation. A lot of that you kind of is logical sense. Obviously, there's still some there, but I'm not writing nearly as much code if things are already in the lakehouse. Sure. To me, I think that Microsoft's that's their master plan. Is first step, we're going to get a data scientist to work with their, like Fabric data. Step 2 is a lot of the things that were previously code only could absolutely be made in some type of user interface or some type of seamlessness. Because again, I think a lot of us just are taking already for granted what the engineering side of Fabric can do without writing any code or little code, just because we have that environment. So to me, I'm a big proponent that the technology changes the process. I would always slightly argue that there's no methodology that's perfect because the technology is always going to change. I personally think Fabric's going to change how we look at the medallion or the standard process with a lot of different things, with shortcuts, with some of that seamlessness. To me, I haven't seen it yet, but it would make sense with a lot of kind of concepts that data science has. So, and that will be my kind of closing thought here.
Awesome. Well, Ginger, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. You are traveling. We can tell by your background. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your day. It's probably very early where you are. But thank you very much for getting up extra early and hanging out with us on the podcast. We really appreciate you. We're going to have you on for some more episodes. So stay tuned. If you want to hear more about data science, the story around it, and Ginger will help us add this, a real perspective of someone who actually does data science as opposed to Tommy and I who play data scientists as an actor on TV. We'll continue to talk about data science and where we think this fits inside Microsoft Fabric. Thank you very much, listeners. We appreciate your ears. We know you could be busy. You could be doing a bunch of other things, washing your hair, going to the grocery store, doing something else that's very productive, but yet you spend your time with us. So we thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We appreciate you. And our only ask is, if you found this conversation enjoyable, please let us know in the comments. What would you like to hear about? Are there any other data science topics you'd like to know about? We've got Ginger for a couple episodes. So this is your direct feed to Ginger, picking her brain. All the consultancy that she's done. That's give us some more questions and some more ammunition. That being said, please share the episode to other people if you don't mind. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Share with a friend since we do this for free. If you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all Power BI Tips social media channels.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.